So today's topic is dialogical leadership, a new perspective in complex times. This topic is all about responsible leadership, which is about striving to become a better person, behaving responsibly towards your colleagues, and making your companies and organizations thrive by developing sustainable business opportunities to solve the challenges of today's world. We're joined by Arjan van Vembde for this presentation, followed by the reflection of Tonye Preghafi. Arjan is a specialist in Dialogic Change, a trainer in appreciative inquiry at BSN, and also the author of the book, Working from Strength. Our reflector today, Tonye Preghafi, is the Group Head, Corporate Resources at Red Star Express Plc, overseeing the strategic management of human resources, administration, and corporate services to enhance operational efficiency across the organization. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We'll come back to your questions during the Q&A, which will be done after the presentation and the reflection. And with that, Arjan, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Jan, for the introduction, and thank you very much, BSN, for having me here this morning. And of course, also thank you very much for making time in your agendas, in your minds, to attend here to the webinar. My name is Arjan van Vembde, as said, and I work as a business consultant, as a trainer, and as a facilitator, and I specialized in dialogical change and leadership. Now, for the next 15 minutes, I'd like to take you on a ride in my development of my thoughts on this subject, and I look forward to your comments in the chat. Please feel free to share your questions or add your insights, and we'd be happy to discuss them later on. One of the things I do is that I host strategic sessions, and so for last Friday, I was in Groningen in the Netherlands. I was there with a boardroom session. And this was beginning in the afternoon, and then these boardroom members, they had a discussion about their middle management. And this discussion hinged on whether these middle management had a top-down function for passing on information from the top to the bottom, or if these middle managements had a function going bottom-up to top, passing on information from employees to the management, to the top management. And watching this discussion going on for a few moments, I made a remark that, well, I thought that both top-down or bottom-up are still one-way communication systems. And I made a suggestion to take on a more dialogic approach. But a little bit to my surprise or neglect, or it was a pity, that my suggestion kind of fell flat in this group. And now, when I realize where I came from myself, actually, I think I shouldn't be surprised that my short remark about taking on a more dialogic approach didn't bring much of a stir. Because that I specialized in a dialogic approach was no easy turn for me. When I look back at my studies, I realized that in my studies and in my early job as a consultant, I was kind of raised in a specific way of thinking and acting. The dominant factors in this way of working I used to work in actually were control, risk reduction, and prediction. Now, this way of working, going for control, risk reduction, and prediction, sounded very logical to me. It was common in my field. My clients asked for it, my manager asked it for me, and I learned about it in trainings. But to be honest, I actually felt a bit insecure about it. I realized that however hard I tried at my inquiries, at my analysis, at my advice, I always felt short to the true complexity of a cases. And oftentimes there was resistance with employees who didn't want to change something. And actually I could feel with them. I understood their resistance a bit. So studying this craft of change in organizations for nearly 2 decades now, I slowly started to recognize that there are several kind of unnamed or implicit characteristics of this way of working. And over the years, I developed a quite different set of knowledge and skills that I think make me and my clients more happy nowadays. And it makes me very grateful to participate in many different projects. To better understand the characteristics of a dialogic approach, it helps me to contrast it, like a contrast fluid, with the classic style of leadership. And I'll give a name to that in a few moments as well. Now, while I try to shine a light on this classic style of leadership, I know I will generalize a bit. But to my opinion, it is still what I see mostly today. And this is that the core motivators of leadership are control and confidence. That's what management wants to have. Things under control and confidence in what they do. And I don't mean that leaders always are in control or are always confident in what they do, or they are never insecure. But I think that a lot of management effort and the way they steer in an organization is motivated by a hunger for more control and more confidence. Now, you may recognize that or not, and maybe we can have a discussion about that later on in the discussion. So please feel free to add your comments in the chat. I will continue with my presentation, so I will not read the chat right now, but afterwards we will read that, of course. Now, I think it is interesting to have a look at where this hunger for control and confidence comes from, and where managers find their control and their confidence. And I think leaders seek this in their understanding, planning, and structuring of what is happening in an organization. Managers want to understand, plan, and control and structure what's happening in an organization. And this touches upon another implicit foundation of this classic style of leadership. The suggestion that it is possible for me as a person to understand what is going on and what needs to be done, as if there is one truth that can be known. And from this premise comes the title for this classic way of leadership. And I call it diagnostic leadership. Diagnostic because the diagnosis of a case and what's happening, this diagnosis takes a center stage in a lot of management efforts. Now, people who work in this classic style seek to be better at diagnosing, because the better they do their diagnosis, the better their leadership is. And so this for me was how I was trained. I was trained to be as good as I could at doing inquiry, structuring data upon evidence-based management models, and giving sound advice. But I think there is another way, another path which is worth exploring. And you will see it coming because you saw the title of this webinar. And this path is a path where the conversations between people involved takes center stage. Now, in this world where leadership is often associated with direction, control, and clear answers, I think kind of quietly, almost underneath the surface, as far as I know, a new kind of leadership is emerging. Now, in a way, it is new because it's not so much practiced, I think. At the other hand, it is common. And I don't think that what I'm about to say here will be completely new to you. I think you will have heard pointers in this direction in many different languages, in many different models and other presentations here. For example, last week there was a presentation on servant leadership. If you were there, you will sure recognize things in my presentation as well. Though even the dialogic approach adds a little, some extra accents, which we will dive into now. This dialogic approach puts the power of dialogue at the heart of change. In this view, the manager or the project leader or consultant is not the one who tells people what to do, but is more of a facilitator of change, a kind of an architect of conversations who helps to unlock the collective wisdom to gain sustainable results. Now, leading in this dialogic way of working is creating the conditions where meaningful conversations can flourish that lead to real change. So this approach changes quite a few things. For one, it means developing specific dialogic skills and an even more self-aware attitude. And these conditions are all about listening without rushing to steer, asking questions that challenge assumptions, about creating safety for honest conversations that help people redefine their reality, how they look at each other, and reshape what they do together. Now, I'd like to go a little bit deeper in the philosophy behind this, because that is what makes me help to understand what's going on here. So before we go to the skills, let's have a short look at the roots of this dialogic approach. Dialogic leadership is inspired by social sciences, and its roots lie in what is called social constructionism. And social constructionism simply means the idea that our experience of reality is a construction in our minds shaped in a social context together with other people. Now, this social construction in my mind, how I feel and think about things, is not fixed, but it is constantly being shaped by our raising, our culture, our experiences, in short, by the stories we share in dialogue with others. And this also explains the title of Dialogic Leadership. A dialogic leader helps teams to let go of old stories and make space for new shared meanings. An illustration I often use in my workshops is a famous rabbit and duck optical illusion. I had an image on that, which is here. And this simple optical illusion, for me, is a very powerful image, because it illustrates that two people can look at the same image and see something differently. So dialogic leadership, in a sense, is all about creating encounters where ducks and rabbits meet, where people with different perspectives meet and come into dialogue and learn from each other. Another phrase which is very important is the phrase of emergence. And emergence is the idea that change doesn't move in a straight, predictable line, but that all that happens, including organizational change, arises out of interactions. And all interactions influence each other again. No one oversees all these interactions. And so no one has a firm grip or control over the interactions, let alone over what is changing in an organization. Therefore, a dialogic leader doesn't hold on to rigid agendas or preset outcomes, but steps into the interactions and always stays open to what unfolds in the moment. And that requires flexibility, but also the ability to spot patterns in the interactions. And most importantly, I think, it is to nurture people's own problem-solving capacity, their talents and potential. Now, one of the most powerful tools in dialogic leadership is therefore what we call a generative dialogue. The idea is that dialogic leadership is not just about having nice conversations, but about conversations, dialogues, which are generative, which generate something which was not there yet. These conversations, they shouldn't just recycle what people already know, but they should actually generate new insights and fresh ways of seeing oneself, each other, and the question at hand. So in dialogue, the ducks and rabbits meet and inspire each other beyond their habitual thinking. And the leader's role here is crucial. By asking the right questions, you can be a catalyst of this creative process. So have a look at some of the essential skills of dialogic leadership. What does it take to lead in a dialogical way? Let me give you 5 essentials. 1. I think it's about creating space for deep listening, making sure people truly hear each other and not just the words or the emotions and assumptions underneath. 2. Curiosity without judgment, asking open questions and resisting the urge to quickly advise or steer in a way that I think is best. 3. Playing with language, offering new words or metaphors that help people see reality in a different way. 4. Balancing safety and challenge, creating a climate where even difficult issues can be addressed without triggering defenses. And number 5, the knowledge of methods and structures. So it helps a lot to know conversational methods that help peel back layers and connect insights, build shared ownership, and move towards action. I often summarize these skills as the language, tone, and timing. In Dutch, that will be taal, tone, and timing, the 3 T's. In the next slide, you can see a few examples. So in language, we can reframe and choose our words, and by reframing, we can have a different look at things. In tone, we can support people's confidence to step into a process which they do not yet fully oversee. And in timing, I think it's very important to create the space where people can step forward and bring in their ideas, and I can bring in my ideas as last. Because when my voice is softer, there is more room for the sound of the group. So, to go to a closing, does dialogic leadership take too much time? Is a question many people ask me. It's a common concern. Well, I think that in my experience, I think the opposite is true. When people discover new perspectives together and feel ownership of their insights, the motivation to act is almost always, it always follows naturally. And instead of trying to convince people afterwards of the great ideas that I came up with, they come up with their own ideas. So we don't have to convince each other afterwards. So actually we can move much faster in change and development. And I think a leader can support this process by closing a conversation with just a simple question. What is one step you could take tomorrow? And that's also the question I would suggest to you. What's the one small step you can take today or tomorrow to go one step forward in the right direction? So, dialogic leadership may sound abstract at first, but to my opinion, in practice, it is mainly a very pragmatic approach. It's about creating the space for meaningful dialogue so that trust grows, engagement deepens, and energy for action emerges. I thank you very much for your attention. This was my presentation.
Thank you very much, Arjan. We'll hand over to Tonye for the reflection.
Okay, thank you very much, Jean. And thank you very much, Arjan, for that awesome insights into dialogical leadership. And I will touch a few on the next few minutes on a few of the points that are raised and see how I can add them and piece them together. Dialogical leadership is rooted in dialogue. And in dialogue, what we mean is authentic, open, and reciprocal conversations between a leader and the team. This is very necessary because in a world where leadership is often associated with direction, control, and clear answers. You know, the insight of the example you gave about, the example Ian gave about talking to a board of directors, and what they felt was the issue with their middle management. They always needed clear answers, and they don't believe in ensuring that you have a dialogue with the team. But you know, what dialogical leadership is emphasizing is that the leader is primarily a facilitator of change and not necessarily providing the answers to the team. So they don't tell people what to do, but they are architects of the conversations that are held, and thereby unlocking collective wisdom, which leads to a more sustainable result. Why does it matter in today's business? I like the topic that was given. It says dialogical leadership in today's complex world. In today's VUCA environment, dialogical leadership provides a way to navigate complexity by tapping into collective intelligence. You know, like I mentioned earlier, no single man has all the answers. And so tapping into the collective intelligence of the team is very, very important. And it strengthens engagement and innovation. It allows the team to have a buy-in. You know, when people believe that they are part of the decision-making, they tend to give a lot more. And it builds resilient organizations. You know, BSN is all about resilience, and where decisions are not just leader-driven, but shaped by dialogue that includes multiple stakeholders. And so what are the key features? We had mentioned a few: dialogue over monologue, shared understanding, trust, and authenticity is very important. Trust in the fact that the leader is able to drive or facilitate the change that is so desired, and you know, allowing them see various options instead of just looking at it from one direction. There's also the generative dialogue area that Arjan mentioned. Generative dialogue that talks about generating what wasn't there. So, you know, it allows the team, so in facilitating the change, it allows the team also to see the differences and opportunities and openness in what wasn't there before. And one of the most important skills or most essential skills in dialogical leadership is listening, deep listening as a leader. You know, one of the challenges leaders have is, you know, they always like to hear themselves. And so having to be quiet and listen to the team is a critical skill that Arjan has just shared with us and is required in dialogical leadership. Finally, you know, one of the things that we may think about is that dialogue, there may not be action. You know, BSN is all about action learning and taking action with options that are available. And Arjan told us today that one of the simplest ways that a leader can ask the team in closing is, what is one step that you can take tomorrow? And I'm also going to leave us with that question. Having heard and learned about dialogical leadership in Goodmorning BSN of today, what is one step you can take to improve your leadership style with your team? Effective today. You don't even have to wait till tomorrow. If you have some engagements with your team today, what is that one thing that you can do differently that will help you navigate through the complexities that your organization might be faced with at the moment? And with that, I want to say thank you. And I hope we've learned a thing or two from the conversations we've had this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tonye and Arjan. I'm not sure if there are any comments. I'm just looking in the chat quickly. Maybe we can open the floor first to ask if there are any questions from anyone.
There's a question in the question box.
Just having a look quickly. Would you mind reading it? I'm just glancing over a couple here. Would you mind sharing the question, please?
Okay. How can a dialogical leader balance between openness and direction in a team?
Shall I try an answer on that?
Yes, please.
Yes.
How can a dialogic leader balance between openness and giving direction? Very good question. And I think it is essential to dialogic leadership that there is not one answer to that. So the question is actually stated very well. It's about balancing. And for me, this balancing is always, I put it in perspective of time. So I think it is most fitting to first be open and being flexible and inviting to a group and a team to hear their opinions, and then adding my opinions and my needs to that. So because there is a chance that the group wants the same thing as I do, so then I don't have to steer in and give directions, but I can just build on the group. And when the group wants something that I can't, we have no budget, for example, then I can add that. It's the meeting of ducks and rabbits. So there are different perspectives, and dialogic leadership is about bringing different perspectives together. And my perspective as a manager is a perspective as well, and should be there. Should be taken in account. I hope that's an answer.
Thanks, Arjan, for the insights. If I may read a comment that has been posted. Thank you so much for this dialogical leadership. This will work in an environment where there is civility, trust, no tendency of bullying, and has no hidden agenda. The waves of changes going on globally is very negative and coming from the USA. This dialogical leadership should be spread across the globe, especially for countries, heads of states, and leaders. Just a point of reflection for one of our attendants. There is another question. How does dialogical leadership compare to change management? Arjan, if you would like to field that one.
Yeah. Well, maybe first I can comment on the first remark, which was that dialogic leadership works in an environment where there is civility, trust, and no tendency of bullying. And this is kind of true, because dialogic leadership builds on dialogue, and dialogue demands at least a certain amount of openness of the people involved to, and willingness to go into dialogue with each other. But then again, trust and civility and no bullying and no hidden agendas may also be an outcome of a dialogic process. So maybe it's not that it should be upfront that it's there before you go into dialogue. Oftentimes, dialogue can lead to more trust. So I think it is also possible to take on a dialogic approach in a situation where trust at forehand is not so high. Okay, well, and then the other question of dialogic leadership compared to change management. Dialogic leadership suggests that in dialogue, people change the way they look at themselves, others, and the question, because rabbits and duck meet, because in dialogue, their social constructions in their minds shift, and that means that dialogue is at the heart of change. When people come into a generative dialogue, and this generates new confidence, self-image, new motivation, that at the end of the dialogue, they come out a little bit different. So that's why in a dialogic approach, you want to bring to the dialogue all the people you will need for the change. You want to engage them in dialogue with each other, and that will lead to change. In short.
Thank you. Thank you, Arjan. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Paul or Tonye, if you've observed anything, please let me know. I don't think I've seen any more there. Are there any other questions from our participants in the session? Anyone else on the line has a question?
Otherwise, I had one more remark I wanted to make on the summary of Tonye. Thank you very much for doing the summary, by the way. Thank you. And this was that in a classic style of leadership, I always suggest that there's kind of a separation of thinking and doing and thinkers and doers. In the classic style of leadership, we often think we have to think first, do our analysis, make reports, do an advice, and then at a moment we say, okay, we stop thinking now. Now it's time to start doing, and then we implement our innovations. And also there's a separation of thinkers and doers. We have the thinkers, management and higher employees, and we have the doers, the customers and employees who have to work with it. Now, dialogic leadership tries to blend all that, thinking and doing together, and thinkers and doers who engage together in the process of change. So that I wanted to remark. And now I see another question here in the chat. Sean.
Right. Please could you help me fill and share? Oh, no, sorry, that's that is the survey question there. Let me quickly see.
Okay. That's something else.
There's one moment. No, I don't see the other question that you might be seeing, Arjan.
No, it was the remark about the. It was something else.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else? Anyone else has a question or a comment? It does not. Let me quickly see. There's one more. Okay, there is one more from Vincent. Who takes ownership of the outcome of dialogical leadership, Arjan?
Beautiful question. I think that the essence of dialogic leadership is that you're in this together. So management and employee together. So, and both should take ownership of the process. So dialogic leadership is not a completely bottom-up approach. Neither is it a top-down approach, but it is a together approach. It's a co-creation. And where all parties participate in dialogue, each from their own perspective, including their political and their needs and their wants and their likes or dislikes. That's all included in the dialogue, and there together we find what you have to do. But I think ownership is a very important word in this approach, where there's a lot of attention for the ownership by employees, customers, other people involved.
Thank you. Right.
You're welcome.
I do not see any other questions or comments. There was a hand up that went down. There's one from Ayodele. In a hierarchical structure, leadership made the tend to feel weak. I'm not sure if that's a question or a statement. It says, in a hierarchical structure, leadership may tend to feel weak. How do we maintain balance? There we go.
There again, I think that balance is the right word. Dialogic leadership is all about recognizing that there are many perspectives which are all relevant and legit. And so also the top-down perspective of management, not wanting to feel weak, is a legit and perspective, is something to deal with, and so it is balance. And I think that dialogic leadership is not about being weak as a leader. It's about facilitating your employees, all involved, to work together to come to a best solution which works for all of us the best. So it is absolutely not about being weak or giving it out of hand. No, you participate with full power in the dialogue.
Thank you, Arjan. I see Ayodele, who put the question in the chat, also has his hand up. Ayodele, would you like to respond? The hand has gone down again. Well, it is 8 minutes past 10. I think that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you very much to everyone who joined the session. Thank you also, Arjan and Tonye, for the insightful session. If anyone on the line would like to know more about BSN's Impact Center for Great Leadership, or if you're interested in a program to further grow your talent or that of your team, just put it in the chat and we'll connect with you. And then please be on the lookout for information about our next session of Good Morning BSN. And we look forward to welcoming you there. Thank you, everyone.